Milk Test Day here at Twin Pear Farm, and I've gathered up my supplies for my milk test. Most important things you need is a hanging bucket, a hanging scale that I will hang the bucket from to weigh the milk. This is certified by Washington, DHIA. I have my supervisor's barn sheet. I have my cover sheet. I have empty milk test vials. And of course, I'm going to need a Sharpie to label each of those vials and a pen to keep track of our milk weights. So we just finished milking Stormy Weather. All of her milk is here in our hanging bucket. I'm going to use my scale. Now mind you, I have weighed this bucket prior to putting milk in it. It weighs 2.27 pounds. I'm going to get my weight, 3.9, and then I'm going to subtract 2.27 from that weight before I record it. Now we need to sample our milk, but it's super important that you stir your milk really, really well to get an accurate representation of your butter, fat, and protein. So I'm going to actually pour it back and forth at least 3 times to stir it. Okay, and now I'm going to, let me pour off a little bit of that. I'm going to put some of this into her sample vial. I'm only going to fill it halfway this morning, and then we'll do the other half with her PM milking. Now I can go ahead and filter my milk as I normally would. We're done with our sampling. And on her sample is going to be a lid that has her name, our herd ID, and her unique number. So she is number 25 in our records. And then I will just leave that on the counter until it's time for my PM milking. So 3.9 pounds minus the 2.27 pounds for the bucket weight leaves us with 1.63 pounds. They only go to 1 decimal. So we're going to just write in on her line here for our first milking, 1.6. Okay, Missy, back in here you go. So once we've completed taking our samples, it's time to finish up our paperwork and get these babies ready for shipment. There is a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. So finishing up our paperwork, I noted all of the does that are on our sheet that are still dry. If you notice and look over to the side, I've previously diagnosed these does as pregnant with a breeding date and a due date. Up here in the top on this doe, she had a very congested udder and was clearly suffering from some mastitis. I was not able to get her full sample, so I put in an abnormal code for her because CAR means condition affecting record. She was not performing her best that day, so I wanted that noted here. She also kidded between our last test and this test, so we've added that code that she's kidded, the month and day that she kidded, the tattoo numbers of her kids, and the ID of the sire. How many of those were males and how many of those were female. I also put in our PM milking time. This is supposed to be in military time. I started to forget and then had to correct it. And then I also needed to incorporate my my fees for sending in my milk test. So I'm sending in 5 samples at $1.50 each. And then the processing fee is actually found on my DRPC cover sheet. So I go up here and I find that I owe them $9.13. So I put that over here, add those up, and I'm gonna write a check to our local Washington DHIA for those fees. So when you're packaging up your samples, our DHIA likes us to use painter's tape to close up the vials. So what they suggest is actually making a little tab and then putting it over the top, pressing it down, and that makes it easier for them to get the tape off without having your lid pop off. So don't go too crazy on taping. Don't use regular Scotch tape. They want to see an easily removable tape. Now each of these samples I'm going to put into one of these snack size Ziploc bags. This is a safety measure because if that shipment was to get busted in the mail, it definitely happened, and each one of your samples is in its own individual baggie, they can sample the milk still out of the bag because it hasn't gotten pooled with the other samples in your bag. So I'm going to go ahead and bag all of my samples up. In addition, for ice packs, I like to just take one of my sample vials and fill it with water and freeze it. I will go ahead and put tape over this and bag this as well so that if it bursts in shipping, we don't have a sopping wet cardboard box that'll freak out the U.S. Postal Service. And I also will put my paperwork, I will fold all of this up and put it in a separate larger bag. So again, if we have spillage, our paperwork and our money stays dry. Once I have all of these bagged individually, I will put them into a well-padded cardboard box. The flat rate USPS boxes in the small size can fit 6 or 7 samples. I'm out today, so I'm going to just use a regular cardboard box and maybe add in some bubble wrap and things to protect them and help keep it cool on the way to the lab. Another quick tip, I make a photocopy of my paperwork before I send it in. When you get your records, your report, you do want to double check and make sure what you've written down and have submitted actually is what ended up on their record. It's not uncommon to find errors in the recordation, and it's on you. You're the one who needs to point it out and get it fixed. So do make a copy for yourself, and then when you get your report, double check your numbers.